Hi everyone, my name is Adam Smith. I work in the the financial aid office of Idaho State University. I'm here to talk to you about how you will be able to use some federal financial aid to potentially pay for college, or just give you some general information about what the FAFSA is and how to apply for it and those things. So I'll start off talking about the application process, where to go, what to do, and then I will move forward with some key terms that kind of get confusing for students, and then finally what kind of aid you can expect and the differences between that aid that you can get from the FAFSA. So without further ado, I will start um, with the application process. So the way to apply for federal aid is through the FAFSA. The FAFSA stands for the free application for federal student aid, basically. And what you have to do for that is get a login name and a password. The login is your FSA ID. So when you set this up, you will need to keep this somewhere safe because you will be using it every single year that you do the FAFSA. And the FAFSA you do have to do each year. So studentaid.gov is where you're going to want to go to this. And what that is kind of a conglomerate site of all the federal aid that you have. So by going to studentaid.gov, you can go create account and then sign into your FSA ID. Um, I recommend that you link the email and your phone to this account, because a lot of times what happens is after a year you don't remember what password you used, so you're going to have to probably get a new one. Easiest way to do it is if you have the same phone number, your cell phone, you can just send a little text to your phone and then you can verify it that way. Parents and students need their own separate FSA ID. So your parents will have to fill out their own FSA ID if parents are required on your FAFSA, and you will also have your own. So please remember that. Once you have your FSA ID created, then you can start actually applying for federal aid through the FAFSA. Again, the free application for federal student aid is what the FAFSA stands for. The next fall, so the fall 2021 school year the FAFSA is already available for you. So you're going to be able to go in there now and start applying for it. And that's going to be good at ISU for fall, spring, and summer of next year. That opens on October 1st. This next October, it'll open again for the following year, so you can get done really fast. You might need parent information on the FAFSA, depending on if you can answer yes or no to dependency questions. So just a brief overview, dependency questions are basically going to ask you specific things like your age, whether you're married, have children that you support over 50% of the year, that sort of stuff. If you answer no to all those, then you're going to need your parents' information in there. If you answer yes to one of them, then you can actually just use your own information or yours and your spouse's information, depending on what your marital situation is. So to get this one, you can apply online at FAFSA.gov. The studentaid.gov also has a link to the FAFSA. So like I said, it's kind of a combo site where you can get to all your federal processes. So go to the FAFSA and then start entering in the information. What it is going to ask you for is tax information. And what we use is what we call prior tax year information. So for this upcoming year, you're going to be using the 2019 taxes. That's going to be for both you and your parents, and the 2019 W-2s. So when you're entering in that information, please note that you have to enter in prior tax year. There's a little caveat though, when you're filling out the FAFSA, it's going to ask you some as of today questions like household size. So if you live with brothers and sisters and you have your parents on there, it's going to ask you your parents' household size, but it's as of today. That's not as of 2019. So just try not to get confused on that. If you ever have any issues, I'm going to have the financial aid's website, or the financial aid's email, and our phone number here at the end, including mine. So you can contact us and we'd be more than happy to help you out with it. For any students attending the Bengal Bridge program, you're actually going to have to fill out two FAFSAs, one for the 2020-2021 academic year, and then the new one for this upcoming fall academic year. And that's just because, like I said previously, summer is attached to the current year. So we're actually still on the 2020-2021 FAFSA for this summer. So just be aware of that. The application process is pretty simple. Once you get in there and answer the questions, it usually gets processed within about 24 to 48 hours. What that means is that it gets sent over to the federal processor, which is called CPS, and they determine whether it's good to go or whether you're going to be selected for verification. Verification is a specific thing where the feds require the school to go after additional documentation. So if you are selected for verification, we will let you know. and it will show up in the student finances tab under your Bangle Web once you can get in there and see everything. It'll be little red flags being like, hey, you need to do this. The type of things that they verify on are taxes, W-2s, household size, that sort of stuff. So you do actually have to turn those documents into the school before we can process your aid application. I recommend turning in your documentation early because it's better for you to know exactly what your award package is going to be before you start school so you can plan and budget. The later you wait, the less likely it is that you're going to know before school until, up to maybe a couple weeks before when you turn the stuff in and we get it to you. So being early on this stuff is always beneficial to you, and it's just something I would recommend doing. Some of the terms that you're going to see with the FAFSA and with federal aid are a little bit different because they mean specific things to us in financial aid, but they mean a little bit different things to you when you just think of them. The very first thing is the EFC, and it stands for Estimated Family Contribution. This is the number that is generated by your information on the FAFSA. When you think of the EFC, Estimated Family Contribution, you're actually thinking, oh, this is what my family needs to contribute. That's not entirely true. What this is the number that is generated that helps us determine need, which is another one of these kind of weird specific words that means something different to us in normal term versus financial aid terms. Cost of attendance is the estimated cost of attendance at ISU. This includes everything from tuition, transportation costs, personal expenses, room and board, and it's estimated because it's going to be a little bit different for everyone else. So we use a generalized amount because we're required to award federal aid. And it might not reflect what your actual cost of attendance is. The things that you need to know are what you actually have to pay. So if you're living on campus for room and board, you will pay room and board, you will pay tuition, any class fees, that sort of stuff. That's what you actually owe the university, and that'll be in your bill. The estimated cost of attendance includes other things like personal expenses, transportation costs, which, like I said, could be different between each person. Need for us is a specific term used to determine what aid eligibility you're going to get. So what different types of awards you can qualify for. And need is going to be your cost of attendance minus the estimated family contribution. So let's say cost of attendance was $10,000, estimated family contribution was $5,000. That means you have $5,000 worth of need that we can award you need-based aid for. And I'm going to talk about what need-based aid is right now. So there's different types of aid that you can get when you fill out the federal FAFSA. The first is grants. So you can get Pell Grant. At ISU, you can get a Pell Grant and an FSEOG, the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Loans, subsidized loan, unsubsidized loan, parent and graduate plus loans, and then work study. Your grants, your subsidized loan, and your work study are all need-based aids. So going back to this screen, if your need's 5,000, that means you can get up to 5,000 combined of all those things. So just be aware of that. Federal Pell Grant last year or this year, the maximum is 6,345. So that's if you come in, you fill out the FAFSA and you have an EFC of 0. And the award amounts are prorated based on your attendance in that semester. So if you're going half-time, you basically get half of the full-time eligibility. And there are 600% qualifications on it, so or a limit basically. And what that equals, 100% would be if you're going full-time for fall and full-time for spring, you're getting the full amount of Pell eligible. That's 100% of your eligibility. So you basically have 6 full-time fall spring years that you can get Pell Grant eligibility from. The SEOG grant is up to $600 per year at ISU, and that is a first come first serve grant with very limited funding. So the earlier you fill out your FAFSA, the better chance that you might get this. You do have to be eligible for Pell to get the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, but fill it out earlier, you could potentially get another $600. The great things about grants is they're not like loans. You don't have to pay them back. They're just there to help you out with school without you having to go into any debt over. Work study is another great program. And basically what you do is you earn money working a part-time job, usually on campus, but it can be off campus. And this helps just kind of get you some experience while you're attending school. A lot of work study jobs are great because you're be answering phones, answering questions. You learn about the office you're working in, and sometimes you have time to do homework while you're working. So you're there for coverage, and you can do some homework and get paid to do it. This is a need-based program, so you do have to demonstrate need. You have to be enrolled at least half-time, And you get the job most of the time through Handshake, which is through the Career Center at ISU. You can apply for work study jobs there. Sometimes people post them out on their doors. If you're walking by, you could potentially go in and ask, and you never know what kind of departments might need some work study help. So it's a really good opportunity if you're looking for some employment while you're attending school. And then loans are kind of the I would say the second major part outside of grant of your federal aid package. And there's three different types of loans really. There's a subsidized loan, and that's only for undergrad students. And this is going to be the government's going to be covering the interest for you while you're in school. So if you're in school, you're attending at least 6 credits, which is half time at ISU, you're not going to have that interest owed at the end. It is a need-based program, just like the Pell Grants and the work study, so you will have to have need to be eligible for it. But freshmen can get up to $3,500 of subsidized loan, and then unsubsidized loan, which is kind of the opposite of that, it is going to accrue interest while you're in school. And that the max amount that you can get as a freshman dependent student, which is if your parents are on the FAFSA, is about $2,000. So as a dependent student, which means your parents are on the FAFSA, you're looking at a total loan package of around $5,500. If you're an independent student, it's about $9,500. So there is a difference between that, but it's just the federal regulations for financial aid. So please be aware that you do have to be half-time for these programs to be qualified for loans. So when you're going to school, if you're going at least half-time, we can offer you loans for that. Students are required, when they take out loans, especially for the very first time, you're required to do entrance loan counseling and a master promissory note. Master promissory note is your promise to pay back any loans. It's going to give some basic information, and the entrance loan counseling is teaching you about what these loans are, different repayments, like when you're going to have to start repaying, how much the interest is going to be, just giving you a lot of good information about the loan program, because with loans, you do have to pay them back. So it's important to know exactly what you're getting into. One of the final federal aid out there is the Parent Plus loan. And this is for undergrad students. It would be a Graduate Plus loan for graduate students. But for undergrad students, your parents can actually take out a loan in their name up to the cost of attendance. So you still have to be part-time, at least 6 credits, and then your parents will apply, get a credit check, and then the funds can go into the student account and help you pay for schooling. So dependent students get paid a little bit less money, right? That $5,500 I previously mentioned, and independent students get paid a little bit more, but dependent students do have the option to have their parents help out with a Parent Plus loan. So are there any questions that are going to pop up? If there are, we have I have my email address here for the financial aid office and their phone number, and please feel free to reach out. And then I have my personal email address and my phone number, and you can reach out to me at any time. So the first question is, I think my parents make too much money for me to qualify for FAFSA. Do I still need to fill it out? That's a really good question. I would say yes. And the reason why is there are scholarships that are based off of the FAFSA, that EFC number that you have. And if you want to qualify for them, sometimes you have to have a certain amount. It might be too much for, say, Pell Grant, but it's not too much for that specific scholarship. So it is really important to have that EFC generated just so you can apply for scholarships. The other reason is work study. If you actually want work study, they might make too much money for Pell Grant, but you might still have the need for work study and subsidized loan and that sort of stuff. So I would still say, yeah, definitely fill it out. And then you can actually see what you get offered. So. And another question, what should I do if my parents don't have a social security number? Okay, so this is a kind of a big one. So if your parents don't have a social security number, you will still be reporting their information on the FAFSA. But when it goes to the social security part where you have to enter in the number, you put in all zeros. If they're still taxpayers, you report their taxes just like normal, just like you would with someone with a social security number. The one issue that you're going to run into, though, is they're not going to be able to sign the FAFSA with the FSA ID. They're not going to be able to create it because that requires a social. So they're going to have to request a signature page from the federal processor. You can do that at studentaid.gov or on the FAFSA.com website. And then they're going to have to hand sign that FAFSA and then submit it. So it's going to delay the processing of the FAFSA, but it's definitely doable. Even if they don't have a social security number, you can still fill out the FAFSA and apply for aid as long as you're eligible. And then how long will it take for me to hear back about how much money I will receive? So this is a good one because a lot of times you submit it and then you might not hear anything. It's going to really depend on the time of year it is. So we just started processing our federal aid for next fall right now. So if you did it in October, it's going to take a little while for you to hear back. Normally, I would say about 24 to 48 hours. Once it goes through the federal processor, it gets loaded into ISU. We send out any information if you were selected for verification, and then we let you know about that so you can turn it in. Your total award package, once we're in the process of packaging, which we just ramped up, it's if you weren't selected for verification, you're going to know pretty much immediately. We're going to put it out there in your student finances tab, and then you're going to be able to see exactly what you qualify for federal aid. And then when should I plan to have the FAFSA completed? As soon as possible. And I think that for verification, I think that for the FAFSA. The one caveat to this would be if you're a dependent student, but you're planning on getting married, say in March, right? So you're like, well, I'm going to get married here in a month. If you get married, you become an independent student. So then you have to start deciding, well, what's more beneficial, waiting until March to fill out the FAFSA or filling it out right away? The other end of that is scholarships open at ISU. Usually the main time is January through May. So if you want to apply for any need-based scholarships, you're going to have to know, hey, I need to get this FAFSA done before then. So it's really going to depend on kind of your situation. But as just a general rule of thumb, apply as soon as you can. Get your verification documents turned in as soon as you can, and then that way you do not have to think about federal aid or financial aid while you're trying to attend classes or get in. So that's a good question. And then finally, we have, what if my parents are divorced? Whose tax information do I need to use? So if your parents are divorced, you're going to look at it a few ways. The very first thing that you look at is who did you live with the most in the last 12 months? If that's mom, then you use mom. If it's dad, then you use dad. And then you use their tax information. If you split between them both, then what you're going to end up having to look at is who supported you more than 50% of your total like basic support for the year. So if it's mother, you do that, or you go with mom's information. If it's dad, you go with dad's information. Another thing to know is when your parents are divorced and they're remarried at the time of you filling out the FAFSA, you will have to use their spouse's information on the FAFSA. So if mom gets remarried and you have a stepfather or she has another spouse on there, you do have to report both of their information. So that is really important to know that. That way you don't have to get verified. You can just put in the information and hopefully it goes through on the FAFSA end easy. Now, with that being said, I know there are some specific situations for people who have really unique ones that need some more help, and that's literally what these phone numbers here are for. You can send us emails to the finadm@isu.edu. You can call us here at this 282-2756 number. You can email me directly. I'm always more than happy to help out and talk about federal aid with you. So if there's no more questions, I will stop sharing my screen and hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day. All right, thank you.